Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the City Council work session with the Planning Commission and the Design Review. First, I'll call the meeting to order and approval of the agenda.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, our first part of public comment will be for anything that isn't related to the housing presentation. Then we will have the housing presentation and then we will open it up for public comment for that topic. Does everyone understand that? No questions? Everybody nod their head if you understand. Good job. Okay, so is there anyone that would like to make public comment for anything other than the housing item on the agenda that's in the audience? Okay, is there anyone online that would like to make public comment that doesn't have anything to do with the housing industry? Presentation. Oh,
We have one.
okay,
Herb.
or Tammy?
Jason, please say it's not so.
Okay, we'd like you to give us your name, your mailing address.
Oh.
Remember, we keep it under 3 minutes and we treat everyone with kindness and respect.
Herb Floor,
Even
PO Box.
Jason.
Herb Floor, PO Box 546, Cannon Beach. And just saying, you know, wow. So much appreciate you. That's all I've got on that one.
You talking to me or Jason?
Jason, and well, both of you, all of you.
Thank you for Jason. Anything else?
No, apparently not.
Okay, is there anyone else? Okay, thank you, Jason.
Oh, good.
One friend of the other.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start our presentation. And Marcy, are you going to?
I'm going to introduce the list.
Okay, great. So this is Marcy from Herbworks.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Is the right angle for this?
Yeah, because it's kind of a little bit of both.
Okay. Yeah, we have a housing survey out and I would just like everybody to take that if they can. There's a flyer here that has a QR code on it and a link. And so if you haven't taken the survey, please do. Tonight's presentation is by Alyssa Gertler. And I'm just going to give you a little information about her background. The issue of housing has been a common thread throughout Alyssa's varied career in community development, which has also touched on land use, transportation, economic development, and parks planning and development, as well as legislative advocacy and strategic communications. She specializes in collaborative regional approach to these issues, recognizing that where people live and work and how they get around and where they recreate are all interconnected issues that require solutions and approaches that go beyond any one government agency or geographic boundary. Alyssa is coming to us from Clatsop County. She's lived and worked there for nearly 2 years. And before that, she worked in Portland metro area for 3 decades. She worked at the city, the county, and the regional government levels. And for the last decade there, she was the Director of Planning and Development for Oregon Metro Regional Government. She also worked at Clackamas County and the city of Portland. So I'm really happy that she's here to talk about the housing issues and touch on some of the questions that we asked in the survey. And just give you a very brief overview of what we've seen on the survey so far. We are up to about 210 responses, which is a really good number for a city like Cannon Beach. And we see that there are people here who spend both kind of evenly split between people who spend 30% of their income on housing less than, and some that spend more than. And that's 30% is a kind of important barrier to the people. The recommendation is that people really should be spending not more than 30% of their income on housing. So we see that there's an equal number of people on the sides of that barrier. We also see that there are about an equal number of people who own and people who rent. And we also see a lot of younger people have taken the survey, people in the cohorts from 24 to 55, I think. So there's a range of age groups that I'm very happy to report we've seen in the survey. We also have a lot of people who commute, but not as many as I thought. We have a lot of people who live and work in Cannon Beach. We did ask people to tell us approximately how much they spend on transportation to get to work if they commute, and because transportation costs do add to your housing costs. And then when we asked a series of perception questions about housing, these had to do with if you agree or disagree with certain statements. And one of the questions that we asked was, we stated the comprehensive plan goal to have housing in Cannon Beach for people of all ages and abilities. And we asked people if they agreed that was being met currently. And we had quite a large number, the majority of people who took the survey felt that that goal was not being met. And then people also provided a lot of information about what they see as a barrier to housing, to getting housing in Cannon Beach, and cost has a lot to do with it. So there will be more formal survey results coming out in a couple of weeks. We plan to keep it open for one more week. And so please, if you haven't taken the survey, get that QR code and give us your feedback. So now I'm going to give it, turn it over to us.
Thank you, Marcy.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I'm gonna be doing the tennis match.
Yes.
I just wanted to say to you guys, thank you so much for having me tonight. This is my first time here at Cannon Beach City Hall, and in the front part, not in the back part. But really great to be invited to be part of this conversation. And I just want to commend you all for even having the conversation and being willing to do it. I know from my years of experience that talking about affordable housing is not always an easy conversation. So you guys are to be commended that you're starting the work and thinking about what it means in your community. It is a national problem, but we have an extra big problem when you're in a recreational community, and the West Coast has a special problem in terms of affordable housing. Just curious, how many of you guys are natives of Cannon Beach? About Clatsop County area. Right, so we're all from somewhere else. And I think that speaks a lot toward sort of where we are in terms of affordable housing and how communities change over time, how people move here and why we've all come here. And so I used to do that when I worked at Metro. I would ask people, how many of you guys are from Portland or the Portland area? And same thing, one person would raise their hand. And that's what growth is. That's what traffic is. We're all growth, we're all traffic. We all came to this little small town because we love it here. I moved to Astoria 2 years ago. I love it there. I'm not going back to the big city. So the first thing I wanted to do is sort of get us all on the same page of what we mean when we talk about affordable housing. Different people throw that word around and mean a lot of different things, and it can mean a lot of different things. So as Marcy was talking about, the federal housing and urban development definition of affordable housing is any housing, no matter what, that costs an owner or renter no more than 30% of their total gross. So if you're paying more than 30% of your whole take-home money, you don't have affordable housing. And that can affect people at all income ranges. And then many of you have heard the term area median income, right? So you say 30% median income, 50% median income. And I thought it would be interesting just to look at what we know the median income is in Clatsop County and figure out who we're talking about. So most of you know what a median is, right? The median income means 50% of people make less than that amount and 50% of people make more than that amount. And so that number is used by HUD to determine whether our areas or whether people are eligible for federal housing funding. So in Clatsop County, there are 3 categories: low income, very low income, and extremely low income. And so low income is considered if you were making 80% of the area median income or less. So not even 100%, but 80% or less. So here in Clatsop County, a family of 2 making 80% of area median income makes $54,000. A family of 4, $68,000. So when I was preparing for this talk, I went online and I looked at job listings to see what jobs are out there right now of people who make this wage. So who is making who's making $54,000 or $67,000. So I looked at, they're hiring at the Clean Line Serve Shop, assistant manager, anybody looking, and they pay $25 an hour. So $25 an hour times 40 hours a week, that's a $50,000 a year job. So you're talking about your assistant manager who needs an 80% median income. I also looked at the postal service, US mail clerk, if anybody's looking for these jobs, these are real jobs. A federal government employee makes $35 an hour to be a clerk at the post office. $35 an hour, $70,000 a year job. If you've got 3 kids, you're the head of the household, that is 80% of median income. If you're an ER nurse at Columbia Memorial Hospital in Astoria, you are also making $70,000 a year. So when you think of who is low income, it could be a range of folks doing a range of things. And then we get to very low income, which is people who are making 50% of median income. And those are the people who usually need rent assistance or some kind of housing rent support. So that is a family of 2, $33,000. Family of 4, $42,500. So front desk at the Stephanie Inn, $20 an hour, 40 hours a week, that's a $40,000 a year job. Those are the people who work here in Cannon Beach. I looked up in-home caregiver earning $22 an hour, 30 hours a week, $26,400. So again, if you're a family of 2, you're an in-home caregiver, where do you live? And then I wanted to just take a minute and do the extremely low income. These are people at 0 to 30% of median income. People who really need rent assistance, the people who get the Section 8, who live in the housing authority buildings, who need some kind of assistance because frankly, there is no housing at market rate to serve these folks. And these are the things you see nonprofit developers developing. Family of 2 at 30% median income, $20,000 a year. Family of 4, $30,000 a year. So if you work at the Pelican Pub, you make $15 an hour, you work 40 hours a week, $30,000 a year. There was an ad for a nanny, $16 an hour, 20 hours a week, $16,000 a year. Where do you live? And then if you're a couple on Social Security, the maximum benefit for a couple on Social Security, $16,000 a year. So again, we're talking about a range of people who live in this community looking for the kind of housing they need. So I just kind of wanted to get us on the page. What do we mean by median income? What do we mean by low income? The other term I think a lot of us talk about is what's workforce housing? What do we mean when we're talking about housing for our workforce? And even though I just went through some jobs to talk about our workforce, I wanted to tell you sort of what the national definition that the Urban Land Institute uses for what workforce housing is. So affordable housing is anything at 60% median income and below, so $0 to $50,000. Workforce housing is what's considered between 60% and 120% of median income. So basically between $50,000 and $100,000 a year income is workforce housing. And then market rate is everything above that. So $100,000 a year income and above. And just for one more talking point on that, at the 60% of area median income, which would be the sort of the floor for workforce housing, rent for a family of 2 would be considered $1,500 in Clatsop County. So looking for a place for 2 people to live for $1,500 in Clatsop County, that's what we're talking about. So I just thought we would start with those definitions. Everybody sort of understand what we're talking about and who we're talking about. The next thing I wanted to talk about is sort of the landscape of housing in Oregon. And I was listening to Marcy read my bio and thought, am I experienced or am I just but you know,
It can be both.
right? I wear it proudly. This gray streak, I'm very proud of it. But what I have seen is how housing has evolved in the land use system, right? I've worked in the city government, the county government, the regional government. I've worked at all different perspectives, parks, land use, transportation, housing, and it is really all interconnected. But housing has become bigger and bigger of a problem. So, you know, many of us moved to Oregon because we love the nature here. We live in Cannon Beach. It's like one of the most beautiful places in the whole state of Oregon. And the reason we have our beautiful nature in Oregon is because we do have our land use system. It protects farms, it protects forests, it protects nature, it protects coastal areas. It's supposed to protect wetlands. And at the time, when the state land use system was created, that was 50 years ago, or maybe even more, in 1973. Governor McCall, he's very proud of it. And many of you may have heard his famous quote, which was to protect us from the evils of sprawl, right? He said, sagebrush subdivisions, coastal condomania, and the ravenous rampage of suburbia threaten to mock Oregon's status as an environmental model. Oregon must be protected from the grasping wastrels of the land. I love that quote because I'm a nerd. But at the time, right, Oregon was like a leader in the environmental movement, and that's what the land use system sprung out of. And the land use system has 19 goals, and they're all very laudable goals, but sometimes they conflict with each other. So goal 1, citizen involvement. Thank you for coming. This is what it looks like. Protecting nature, protecting coastal areas is a specific land use goal, but so is housing. And so I think here in Cannon Beach, this is one of the places where we struggle quite a bit between how do we provide housing and meet that state goal? How do we protect nature? Both things are important in the state system. But the world has changed in the last 50 years and different things have come up and the system has gotten some updates lately, and particularly around housing. And I think it's important just to sort of understand the lay of the land for housing in Oregon. In 2019, the legislature passed 2 bills, House Bill 2001, House Bill 2003, that are like major updates to the land use system. Again, for nerds like me who've been spending however many decades, Marcy said, working on this. This was like a really big deal. So House Bill 2001 basically expanded housing choices. And what it did is it got rid of what's considered single family zoning. So in single family neighborhoods, now you can build a duplex, ADU, triplex, townhome, all of the things called missing middle housing. And that's required for cities over 10,000 in population. It's not required for cities under 10,000 in population, but the idea is supposed to be statewide. And the cities all had to we're all required to update their codes. And there's a language in the bill called clear and objective standards. The idea being trying to eliminate, I don't like this one, let's not build it here. And so that was the goal of House Bill 2001. They also passed House Bill 2003, which required all the cities over 10,000 in population to plan for their needed housing. They have to do something called a housing capacity analysis and a housing production strategy. So here in Clatsop County, Astoria is the one city that has the population big enough to need to do that. And what the state did is it created this thing called the Oregon Housing Needs Analysis, where at the state, they now analyze the housing needs for the state and they allocate to cities their targets. So each city gets a target and then they have to figure out how they're going to meet it. If they don't meet it, the state will swoop in and nobody knows what they're going to do, but that's what they're supposed to do. And the other thing is about the Oregon Housing Needs Analysis is it's really focused on improving housing production, housing affordability, and housing choice. And that is about furthering outcomes for people to have housing who right now don't have access to housing and sort of opening the landscape to people who may need help. So as I mentioned, Astoria is required to do this. No other cities in Clatsop County are required to do this, but we have the Clatsop County Housing Task Force. Shout out to those of you who attend that meeting. And that is a regional group that has all of the cities and the county working together on housing issues. And I'm really glad that you guys are so involved in it. Because it's going to allow us to take a regional approach to our affordable housing and not just say, what does Astoria need to do for its legal requirements? But frankly, as we were talking about, everything fits together. You might live in Cannon Beach, work in Astoria, vice versa. It's not one city's job to solve the housing problem by themselves. We're all interrelated. The other thing I wanted to mention is the other update that happened to the land use system that is important is about climate change, which was not considered in the 1970s as a thing that we needed to worry about. So the state also passed a bill that's called Climate Friendly Equitable Communities. And it also really focuses on increasing housing density and making it easier for people to use something besides a car to get around. So reducing parking requirements, reducing road expansions, which actually affects affordable housing because now it's easier to build affordable housing without having to spend money to build what I like to call affordable housing for cars. So update, that's kind of where we are with the lay of the land in Oregon is state is swooping in and saying we need more housing. And many of you have heard Governor Kotek say her goal is to produce 36,000 units per year of affordable housing, of housing period of every kind in the state. That came out of the state's housing needs analysis that basically said we are short 500,000 homes in the next 20 years for Oregon. And we're behind now and we're only getting further and further behind. And so you think about it, we're basically producing about half of that right now in Oregon. We produce about 18,000 homes a year. We need double that in order to meet the population needs at every income level. So now I want to talk a little bit about sort of our unique landscape here in Clatsop County. So most of you know, recreational communities have our own unique issues, right? We're the place where people come to play, right? The population of Clatsop County is 40,000, but in the summertime, it could be 80,000, 100,000. Our population doubles and triples during tourist season. And that is a really big deal. We don't have the resources, we don't have the ability to serve the people who are here year round because we're catering to the people who are doubling and tripling our population during certain seasons. Yeah, we'll get to the short-term rentals in the second homes part too. But I think we know that when you're a recreational place, and the coast is, Cannon Beach is not unique. It may be the nicest place on the coast, but other coastal communities face it too. Places in the Columbia River Gorge face it too. Wallowa County faces it too. Any place where people come from urban areas to have fun changes the housing market, changes the transportation market. Frankly, your police chief can tell you it changes how public safety is handled as well. You may know already that Cannon Beach has the most people who commute to work in Cannon Beach from anywhere else in the county. And sort of the other side of it is the longest commute to time as well. So your people are commuting from further away to Cannon Beach than anywhere else in the county. Also, Cannon Beach has the highest percentage of vacant units in the county. Over 50% are empty most of the year. And according to your own city staff research, the city has approximately 2,000 housing units total. 705 of those are considered primary residences. 205 of those are considered short-term rentals. And just over 1,100, so more than half, are considered non-primary rentals. Thank you to the community development staff for that. But it does kind of lay out the scope and scale and the numbers of the problem. Many of you were around and participated in the Clatsop County housing study that was completed in 2019 that also had some key findings about sort of the needs for housing in the county. What it found is technically, if you count the number of houses and the number of people in Clatsop County, we have enough. But we don't have the right kind is what it said. Sufficient supply, but the wrong kind. So we don't have enough we don't have enough housing to meet year-round residents' needs. We have so many second homes, so many vacation rentals that we're not providing the right kind of housing for the people who are living here, the people who are growing up here, the people who are coming here. That study projected that in the county over the next 20 years, we have a need for 1,500 new homes of every kind at every income level across the market. And so you think about that, divide that by 5 cities, 300 homes a city. Are you guys building 300 homes a year? I don't know any city that is, right? Astoria is not. I think we have plans and goals, but that's not what's happening. The study also recommended add more multifamily rentals, add the missing middle, duplexes, townhomes, ADUs. And also add home ownership, but affordable home ownership for people who are year-round residents. And it's also, the study said, and if you can reduce obstacles to infill, even better. Those of us who live in Astoria, there was a landslide, we're like, yeah, that's an obstacle to infill. But many of you also know we have major land constraints in the county, right? We have very sensitive environmental lands. We have infrastructure constraints, frankly, every city in the county and the county itself unincorporated. We don't have sufficient infrastructure, water, sewer, roads, wastewater, all of that. And we don't have the resources we need to scale up in order to build the infrastructure needed to support the housing. So for example, City of Warrenton is trying to do a 450 housing unit development. They don't have enough wastewater capacity. They don't have the resources to upgrade the wastewater capacity, so they can't. So that's just one of many examples. I could literally go city by city and talk about the challenges that we all face in building housing. If it was easy, we would not be having this meeting tonight. So I just want to leave you with sort of, well, we know there's a problem. I can sit here and give you statistic after statistic defining the problem. The question is, what's the right way to start tackling it? And frankly, conversations like this, looking at your code as you guys are doing, that's like the right first step. What are the tools and levers that we have that allow us to actually make changes? I also wanted to mention that, as we talked about, we're doing a countywide housing planning study that just started this month. We're going to look at the buildable land inventory across the county. What land do we have to build housing? And how buildable is it really? How wet is it? How slopey is it? Is there going to be a landslide on it? Because the state wants us to do that as part of our requirements. But frankly, our 2019 study said, yeah, some of the lands that seem buildable might not be as buildable as you think. So this study will help us get more information, and it's going to be city by city. So Cannon Beach is going to get their own buildable lands inventory that will help you figure out sort of what the lay of the land is for you here. We're also going to do an infrastructure needs inventory. So we're going to match the buildable lands with all of the plans for road, water, sewer improvements that are on the books under capital improvement plans, and figure out like, what's the price tag? What would it take to upgrade these systems? Where do we need it? Where would be the biggest bang for the buck to make an infrastructure investment that would allow us to support housing? Again, it'll be city by city. So you guys are going to get your own Cannon Beach specific body of information that can hopefully help. And the last thing we're going to look at in that study is building supply. So how many apartments do we have? How many single family homes do we have? How many are considered non-primary residents? Your city is actually ahead because your staff has already done some of the research. One of the key questions that's come up in other parts of the county is conditions of buildings. Wow, we have an apartment, but it's full of mold, so it's not in good condition. So maybe the rents are low, but is it a good place for somebody to live? Yes or no? And so again, it'll give us a better idea of what kinds of housing do we have? What kind of housing is missing? What are the gaps we need to fill and where? We just started, so it'll take a year for us to give you the answer to that question, but you are actually, many of you on the city council are actually part of the steering committee who will help guide that work, and we need your participation to make sure that it's useful. We in the county at Clatsop County have just been working on a package of our own code updates to make building ADUs, duplexes, triplexes in the rural residential areas of the county more doable. Just sort of doing that clear and objective standard thing. What would it take to put an ADU on my property out in Elsie or Jewel or Vine Maple? And just little by little trying to make a change. And frankly, I think that's kind of what we're all facing is we have an uphill battle. It seems like an insurmountable problem, but really one step at a time. You don't have to solve the whole world at once, right? You can take a step, you can change your code, you can look at your parking, you can make your standards clearer. And I think that's really the question that I put back to you guys tonight is sort of, what are the right ways to start making change? What are the right bites that we can take of this apple to start addressing the needs? And particularly, one size doesn't fit all. What works for Astoria is not going to work in Cannon Beach, Warrenton, Earhart. Everybody's got their own issues. I've stood in front of other city councils in Seaside and Astoria and had the same conversation. What are you going to do? And really the answer is different every single place. So I'm just here to lay that out to you. Sort of, we know the problem, we can define the problem. Now we have to figure out what are the right next steps. And with that, I will sort of leave it to you to sort of talk about like, where do you want to take it from here? And I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's all I got.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Alyssa, do you have any best known methods?
Any what?
Any examples of people who are doing things right in the state?
Yes, I actually think there's a category of city that I would call sort of, actually, this is what one of my colleagues calls it, punching above their weight class, right? So actually places in like Deschutes County, so Bend, Madras, Redmond, Sisters, also a very recreational area with huge housing price issues, and same with again, similar issues of workers can't find places to live, so businesses can't find workers. I would say places like City of Madras, who've changed their code to make it really easy for people to build on big lots, 2 or 4 or 3 units where you could only build one. So I think that's actually a great start. I think City of Hood River is coming along. There's a whole body of work that people are doing around second homes and short-term rentals in terms of limitations or caps, or frankly, taxes and fees that then generate revenue for your city. So that you don't get rid of them because they are part of your economy, but you generate revenue for the city and then use it to buy land. Me and Clatsop County did an evaluation of all of our county-owned surplus property to say, is there any property that is publicly owned that would be better used for housing? And we actually have found 4 key sites that we think might be good. So I actually think using publicly owned land for housing is a great way to stimulate a partnership with a private developer, bring resources in, but still maintain the city's ability to have some editorial discretion in terms of what gets built. So I think there are a number of different land, financing, taxing, code changes that could be done.
Yeah, I've heard that it said so many times in the last year about how the state says that we need housing across the board, every kind of housing. Does that include high-end second homes? Do we need those?
That's a good question. And I guess second homes is a different question than, homes that people with high incomes can afford, right? People with high incomes need a place to live too, right? And so the issue is not, should we build another subdivision for nice people, high income folks? The issue is, how many houses does one family need? And so the state has actually been silent on it in terms of second homes, but they are about to do this rulemaking process that's gonna allocate housing need based on the percentage of second homes that are in a community, and basically say, if you have non-owner occupied houses that are not considered primary residences, you will have a higher housing production target. So I guess the answer from the state is second homes are not needed. And that's actually what came out of the 2019 housing study for Clatsop County is we have enough buildings, we just don't have anybody who lives in them. So yes.
Thanks.
There's been some talk about taxing second homes higher than primary residences. Do you know of any community that is doing that in Oregon and or considering doing it? And do you know of any legal ramifications to do that?
The places I know that have tried it are mostly in the Bay Area in California and in British Columbia. And they're all being legally challenged, frankly. I think this isn't something that has quite been legally tested yet. And there's different taxing methodologies and different approaches to doing that. And I think eventually someone will figure it out and get it right as it works its way through sort of the pilot phase is what I would call it. In Oregon, I know a number of cities have considered it, but I don't believe that anybody has implemented it successfully in this state yet.
Okay.
But we could be part of the pilot.
Hi, it's Michelle. Is it okay if I talk? It feels like.
Sure.
Okay. Do you know anything about, have you heard about it being successful about the empty home taxes? Where if a home is empty for a certain amount of time?
Yeah, that's a similar question, I think.
Okay.
And the answer is there are places that are looking at doing that. City of Oakland, California did it.
Yeah.
In Oregon, it has not been done yet. And frankly, I think it is the recreational communities that have the highest impact on the second homes. Where Cannon Beach is probably one of the places in all of Oregon where it would be most likely to be successful, right? I think again about a place like Hood River, other beach communities. If it's going to be done anywhere in Oregon, this is probably the place where it makes the most sense of anywhere in the whole state. So we have, like I said, if you know, when you think about what are your incremental next steps, that may be an incremental step to do a little more research upon and figure out if it's something that would make sense here and how to build one that is legally sound.
Have you heard of people getting rid of allowing fractional ownership?
That's a good one. I actually haven't heard of that. I'll have to research that because that's an interesting question.
Yeah, I believe that happened in California recently. Just
Yeah, California is ahead of us on a lot of housing issues, actually. I don't know which way to look.
Oh, I'm on the.
You're doing fine.
I hear you over here, but I see you over here.
Other questions from council, planning commission, or design review?
At the last meeting of the Regional Housing Task Force, you talked a little bit about urban growth boundary reserves. Can you tell us what that means and what it looks like, what it might look like for Cannon Beach?
That's a really good question, and I might need your community development staff help, but the idea of an urban reserve, which is what we talked about at the task force meeting, is the idea of looking out 50 years and trying to figure out where you're most likely gonna develop and which land is most developable. So on top of a buildable lands inventory and saying, these are the pieces of land that we know we could build on. You know, right now, everybody's got an urban growth boundary. You have to ask the state if you can expand it. In other areas, they've done what's called an urban reserve, where they've looked out beyond the 20-year supply to the 50-year supply. And as we talked about at the housing task force, that allows you to say, we are going to develop here. Maybe not right away, but in the next 20 years, this is on the table for urbanization. This is on the table. We'll put our infrastructure needs there. We'll figure out how to serve that land over time. But it also takes land off the table and says, this is land we're never going to develop in 50 years. We can have some certainty about environmental protection. And that's where I've seen it in places like the metro area, where they've said, we're never going to develop the wineries in the Hill County, right? We're never going to develop the farmland in French Prairie where the berry farms are, because it's prime farmland. So we're going to draw a line around it. When we look at the metro area, we're going to say, these are the places that are suitable for housing. These are the places that we want to preserve nature. So frankly, you know, you look at the coast, I do this in a story, like, see that water out there? That's not land we can build on. We have a natural urban growth boundary here. We only can grow so far. We can only expand our land supply so much, right? We're not Central Oregon where they have a lot of land. And so it probably, you know, again, it's a regional approach. The idea of looking not just at Cannon Beach, but at Seaside and at Warrenton, and sort of having a regional conversation about, these are the places we all need to get behind, because over time we want to develop them. We have to get money from the state for infrastructure. We have to figure out what our comprehensive plans are for these areas. The state right now is considering the governor's bill in the soon to start legislative session that will expedite urban growth boundary expansions if you promise to keep 30% of that housing at an affordable level over time, which is a really interesting, untested idea as well. But here it might mean understanding, you know, how many acres do you have to work with? And then, you know, frankly, all of our coastal communities, land is a scarce resource. We're not going to make more of it. And so then the question becomes, how do we make the most of the land we have, right? And they call it land efficiency. So how do you make it denser? Do you put things closer together? What are the regulatory and code opportunities you have to use the land you do have as efficiently as you can for the most housing production? And, you know, some people would call that like the dirty D word of density, but frankly, that is what it is, you know, building 2 houses where you used to build 1, build a triplex where you used to build a single family, and being ready to make the most of the land we do have. So I hope that answers that.
It does.
But do they also consider things like rent controls, and do they consider things like vacancy taxes, and do they consider, you know, things that don't require more density as well? I mean, you even said yourself, there's more houses than, you know, we have a huge housing inventory. It just isn't usable. So I don't think that density is the only solution. I think there are a lot of other solutions too that have to go hand in hand with it.
I definitely think when you talk about what does it take to build housing, you need land, you need infrastructure, you need a market, right? You need somebody who's gonna buy it, rent it, sell it, live in it. And frankly, the market is what has led us to this point. And so it's true that, you know, land is one of the inputs that you need, but it's not, you're right, it's not the only input. And frankly, there are many policy, finance, regulatory levers that you can bring to the table, like you're describing, especially taxation or fees or finance or whatever, that allow you to use the land you have in the way you want to use it, rather than just putting more houses on the same land. So I think that's a very good point.
I have a question about, we're talking about punitive, like discussion about punitive measures, in terms of increased taxes on, for different reasons. Is there other communities that have gone the opposite direction and created incentive programs to renting to people greater than 6 months or whatever, to create actual housing that's somehow tax deductible for the property owner?
Yeah, and you only just have to look at down at Manzanita, and I think they've done, you know, a tax abatement, County of Tillamook. They basically will give tax abatements to housing that's affordable housing that is for local folks. And so, yes, that does happen. Basically tax abatements, right? I would argue that the state of Oregon, with all of the affordable housing finance tools, that is an incentive. If you're developing housing at a certain income for a certain population, you have access to state resources to help finance affordable housing. And if you're not developing that housing, those resources will go to a community that is. And so you're absolutely right that it could be used the other way to incent the kind of things you do want, not just to punish the things you don't want. Very good.
So how can Cannon Beach participate in some of these cooperative regional approaches?
Well, I think looking at, frankly, I think the land is a question. Where do you want to grow? Where do you not want to grow? I think the opportunity that you have in looking at your code to figure out, are there places we want to be able to build a duplex? Are there places we want to be able to build ADUs, right? Knowing that it might not be everywhere, but being able to have really the certainty of knowing where things are and aren't going to happen, and being able to put that in your code and in your plans, so that each time something comes up, it's not a whole planning process and a whole decision-making process. Hey, we've already decided these are our 3 growth areas. These are our 3 missing middle areas, whatever they may be. And basically being able to sort of create certainty of where you do want to produce housing. To your point, speaking affirmatively about what you do want, instead of saying, hey, here are the things we don't want, I think is really a key to being able to do that. And I think the work you're doing and you're looking at your code, just sort of saying, where are the opportunities to make changes that reflect the goals that we have? And I imagine you already have goals in your comp plan about this. And so being able to sort of say, we've set these goals, what do we want to do to make it easier? And also to tell people, hey, that area, that's gonna be off limits. We're gonna keep that one as it is, but over here, we're gonna do this. And I don't live here, I don't vote here, so I don't want to get into any specific sites or specific properties, but it seems that you guys have had some discussions about, is this place a suitable place to do affordable housing? And being able to say, yeah, this is where we're gonna go all in here. We're gonna try to make something happen here, I think is one way. But to your point about regionalism, you know, you have a lot of people who want to work here but live somewhere else in the county, and trying to figure out sort of matching employers with housing. You know, City of Seaside is doing that project with Providence Seaside to provide housing for the people who work at Providence Seaside Hospital. We all want those doctors and nurses and ultrasound techs and medical assistants to have a place to live so we can go to the doctor. Again, maybe partnering with employers and kind of figuring out how, like, who works in Cannon Beach that needs a place to live, and how do we support employers in making sure that we're providing housing for their workers. That's one of the things we've been talking about with Astoria, about partnering with some of the downtown businesses and the breweries to say, hey, Fort George, what do you need? How do we partner with you? And so you might have a similar opportunity around partnering with businesses here.
And what can Fort George do to help with the housing thing? Not just what the city can do for Fort George, but it'd be nice if businesses also took a hand in this and contributed something to the conversation and, you know, helped with providing housing.
Yeah, or land or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
You know, you've seen CMH, Columbia Memorial Hospital comes to the task force. They're extremely proactive about trying to find housing for their workers. They've bought housing, they've gotten into the landlord business, which I don't know if they're super happy about, but it's enough benefit to the hospital, like to your point. They have to put some skin in the game in order for them to really be able to get the benefits that they're looking for. So yes, absolutely.
I think one of our challenges is the limited building land inventory here. We've got very few spaces where we can actually, you know, even consider something. Some of them don't have the infrastructure that you were talking about. And I recall you mentioning at the last meeting also a state program that is on its way that might help communities fund infrastructure where housing could be built. Is there anything more on that?
Yes, so you may know the legislative session starts on Monday. It's the 6-week called the short session in Salem. The governor has made it pretty clear that housing is her one and only big priority this year. And there's a number of, the bill is called Senate Bill 1537, if you guys want to follow it for the next month. And it has all of her proposals in it, including $200 million for housing related infrastructure. And also, if you guys want, I will track this bill and I will send you all the information. So the $200 million for infrastructure, everybody in the state is already like lining up for this money. I mean, of course. And so, you know, working with your senators, working with your legislators, making sure that they are advocating for your projects and programs. But frankly, this is one of the things that I've been doing at Clatsop County is just trying to get Clatsop County on the map at the state level, right? Many of you guys know the metro areas, the big cities, they dominate the state conversations. We've all heard the urban-rural divide conversation. And the fact is, you know, it's easy to overlook us and be like, Salem needs this, Bend needs that. And we get overlooked. And part of the way we get more attention and more resources is by winning, right? Like, don't give us money because we are so terrible. Give us money because we know what we're doing. And so that's what we've been doing around the homelessness work and at the county and with Astoria is trying to prove that we actually, you give us money and we'll put it to good use, right? You want to promote housing, we're willing to step out there and show you that we're doing good projects. And so being able to compete for that state money means being able to be a good case study, right? You guys are all elected officials, giving the governor a political win. Hey, look what we did in Cannon Beach for $20 million. We built a plant and we got this many units and boy, they're serving their workers. And why can't other communities be more like them? And that's really unfortunately, the politics of it is showing that we can do good things with the money so that they will give us more. Right now, Astoria has a request in, Warrenton has a request in, because they have projects that could be shovel ready, if not for wastewater, water, roads. And frankly, if you guys can get to that point of we have a project that but for infrastructure, we could go. Frankly, I could help you lobby for it, right? There's ways to go to Salem. You guys are all well connected. You can all lobby for this yourself. But that's how you get the state infrastructure money. There's also going to be money for planning. There's going to be money for environmental remediation. If this whole thing passes, there will be multiple funding sources. And frankly, one of the things I'd like to do at the next task force is sort of go through the bill and say, here is what is in it, and here's what it might mean for Clatsop County. So that if it does pass, we're ready to be right at the front of the line.
Thank you.
Hi, I keep raising my hand, but have you heard a successful city? I think a city that adopting the Senate Bill 919. I have a couple questions really quick. With tax-free for if you new construction of ADUs and duplexes. Have you heard much about that? If that's been successful, if anybody's actually adopting it?
I have not heard about that specific bill, but what I will say is that I have heard that ADU construction statewide is not as successful as people think. So cities have put it in their codes, people have made it allowable, but frankly, there's not a big uptick in it because not every homeowner wants to be in the construction business or in the landlord business or in vacation rental business. And so it's still an idea whose time has not all the way come, is what I would say. And even this is in metro areas, this is in rural areas, this is in vacation areas. ADU uptake is slow.
Okay, yeah, it's giving a tax break of 5 years if you build a new construction and it's a primary residence of an ADU. Okay, yeah, so I was just letting everybody know there. And the other question I had really quick, have you heard anything about making it, if you have an R2, that you have to build R2, or instead of like one McMansion? Like I've been researching this a bunch. Also, I'd like to be on your task force.
All right, we'll get your email after the meeting.
Okay, cool.
Okay, now, so the question was, no, I forgot about the question.
Oh, I asked about the
No,
R2,
maximum.
and then I was just asking about the Senate bill. It just passed, I believe, on January 1st, I think, or something. But I was asking about the R2, if instead of these large lots that are zoned R2, instead of it just being one McMansion with a huge floor area ratio, if it could be two with half the amount. I'm just wondering if that's actually enforceable. I haven't found anything on that, or if anybody actually passes anything, because right now it's R2, you can just build one big mansion, or mansion, I'm using that word loosely, but as opposed to just going like, hey, you bought an R2 thing and you want your second home here, but guess what? You have to have two homes or whatever. You know, the density word, what you're talking about. Sorry.
Luckily, your consultant knows the answer to this.
Okay.
There are some cities that have a minimum density requirement now, so you would have to meet that. A number of cities adopted that with the middle housing. But you might remember that Jeff Adams, your planning director previously, on the public benefits proposal that we talked about, that was a attempt to decrease the FAR that's allowed, but give it back if there were additional units. So it's an idea, it's still on the table, it's part of this, next bit of work that we'll be doing. But I think, Michelle, that might address the issue that you're describing.
Yes, thank you.
And in a case like that, if you incentivize building multifamily or ADU, I'm assuming we can not permit short-term rental. We can not allow short-term rentals on either of those properties by a deed restriction, I would guess. Is there any way to require a long-term rental or incentivize long-term rentals in that kind of situation?
There's a whole body of work on landlord tenant law, right? And I think this is where like land use meets landlord, right? In terms of how you want to regulate sort of what people are able to do in terms of the income from their property. So I don't know if that's what you were gonna say as well.
I was gonna say that the whole issue of decreasing or eliminating the option for a short-term rental or a home to be used as a second home. Those are things that are on the table we should talk about. And it sounds like, given that fact that there's enough housing, but it's not being, it's not the right housing, like it's being used by other people who aren't there. But there's enough housing to house the people who need housing in Clatsop County and in Cannon Beach. That's a really interesting fact. I hadn't understood that. So it seems like unlocking that potential would be part of your key to solving one way to solve the issue. Someone in the survey offered that just reducing the zoning districts in which second short-term rentals can be used, considering them a commercial use, was a possible solution, so that they would only be, short-term rentals would only be permitted within a commercial zoned area, or potentially a mixed use area, but, and I was wondering, you know, is that been on the table here before? Is it on the table in other cities in Clatsop County?
There was a proposal in the city of Astoria to turn the 11th Street Barber Shop into a short-term rental right on 11th and Commercial. And that brought up that very topic in terms of, should we treat short-term rentals as businesses and limit them in residential neighborhoods? And frankly, like Cannon Beach, Astoria values their downtown, values the commercial nature of the business district. And so that proposal did not succeed. But it brought up the conversation in the city of Astoria in terms of, are there geographic locations on a map that we can say, this is a place where we're okay with short-term rentals, and this is a place where we're not? I have worked in the Columbia River Gorge, and that's something that they've done in White Salmon, Washington, is basically make a map of saying, these residential neighborhoods, no short-term rentals. These areas close to the downtown, where we are close to business, yes, you can do short-term rentals. And so one of the ways to do it is just geographically limit where you want to put them.
I believe our code,
We've had that conversation. We haven't done anything with it, but we have, the council has had that conversation.
and I believe our code already doesn't allow an ADU to be used as a short-term rental. We do have a little problem to fix because there's the actual main residence could be used as a short-term rental, but the ADU would not be. So that's probably a loophole we need to close. But I guess in the situation of an ADU or a duplex or even a empty second home, I guess my question was leading to, are there ways we can incentivize that becoming a long-term rental?
You could place restrictions on that from becoming a short-term rental, right?
Right. But
You could put a cap on the total number in your city. You could do a lottery system. There are a number of tools that other cities have used in terms of minimizing and limiting where and how many they can exist.
I think.
I'm more thinking of that huge inventory. I think you said 1,100 essentially empty second homes. Is there any kind of incentive to offer those people to convert them to a long-term rental?
Tax them more. I mean, that's it.
You're gonna have a chance to make comments in just a couple minutes, okay? Thank you.
Well, this goes back to do you use the carrot or the stick approach? And I think that that's really kind of that's the question that every city is asking themselves. Do we get more flies with honey or not, right? And so, I'm a fan of, it looks like a carrot, but it's really a stick, just painted orange. And so that's like, a tax on how often you're not there. Frankly, I do think they're, working with property owners there are seasonal workers here, there are seasonal property owners. Hey, how wouldn't you like to get a little income when you're not here? Frankly, there can be landlord programs that can be put in place to incent people to rent to employers or rent to workers. And I think there are a number of more carrot-based approaches than stick approaches in terms of figuring, I think there are probably a subset of those 1,100 homes where people would be open to generating income when they're not here by having, a certain type of worker, a certain type of resident there for the short term. We've talked about that with Seaside School District. There's many of different opportunities around who might be a good partner. Healthcare institutions, educational institutions, that might be a good starting point. Right? Teachers can take the summer off, come back, live here and work here and teach. People can come to their second homes. So there are some opportunities I think that you could explore further.
I always thought it would be great if you would incentivize homes for artists. There could be an artist residence program that took advantage of empty homes that are empty here. That would be part of the heritage of Cannon Beach.
That'd be a cool Cannon Beach thing, an artist in residence kind of program. Frankly, I think you guys this is a unique city in Oregon, and you do have opportunities to try things that others haven't tried that sort of do speak to the character of this community. That's actually a really great example of something that could be put in place that's proactive and positive rather than punitive.
Yeah, I just think that so many of the empty houses are, especially the big gorgeous ones are, people are not going to want to rent them out because they don't need the money. There is no incentive financially that you could afford them that would make it worthwhile for them to have strangers living in their house.
Well, and not everybody wants to be a landlord. It's that you don't want to answer the phone and be like, I think the toilet's leaking, right? I mean, nobody really wants to do that. And so,
But a tax on, taxes can be used to generate money for buying property or, to build affordable housing, right?
Vacancy taxes, yeah.
For any kind of taxes. I mean, it can be directed towards perhaps the way the stick that you're applying is not going to force that situation to turn into affordable or to housing or affordable housing.
Right.
Taxes obtained through that stick could be directed toward creating.
toward programmatic
Right.
approaches.
Yeah, helping you buy land. Yeah.
Okay, are there any other questions from members of planning, design review, or city council before we open up public comment? And
I
you will-
have one more question because
Okay.
this is clearly
Go
my one, well, you guys are like basically talking about me. I'm an artist that can't afford my rent. So I was wondering if there's like an mathematical equation of how to like limit the STRs that are allowed. Like if that's actually already a thing. Like, I mean, like putting a cap on the, Airbnbs, et cetera.
That's something that we are discussing, Michelle.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Yep, we are.
Oh, okay. That's the
Well,
answer.
I think her question is there a precedent already set with a calculation of?
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
What's a reasonable number percentage wise of total housing stock?
I will say that different cities have taken different approaches, right? Sometimes it's a total number, percentage of population. Sometimes it's geographically limited. So I wouldn't say that there is a one size formula in terms of what percentage of your building stock or your land supply would be used for short-term rentals. It's more what Marcy was saying, which is creating revenue streams that then can be used to support city programs or city initiatives that then address the issue. It'd be interesting though to do the math.
Okay, anything else from anyone? Okay, so we are going to open it up to public comment. And we're going to start with the audience first. When you come up, please give your name and your mailing address. We probably have a lot of people that want to talk, which is what we want to hear from all of you. So we really appreciate you keeping it as close to 3 minutes and extra bonus points if you can even make it shorter. Okay, and if you have direct questions for our presenter, that's fine also. Okay, who would like to go first? Lila?
I'm Lila Wickham, PO Box 208, Tolawanda Park. So my first question is, has anybody implemented putting a percent of the building permit for affordable housing? Like if you're buying a $500,000 house building, 1%. If you're building $1 million house, 5% or anything like that. I realize that's not an incentive, but.
Yeah, I believe that's been tried. I can't tell you where, but yes, I believe that people have added fees and other licensing costs to high value properties in order to generate revenue for affordable housing. So yes.
So on the building side, not taking something away from them later.
Right, exactly. Like when you're going in to get your building permit for your new home, adding a surcharge, adding a fee, that's your affordable housing fee, basically is what you're saying.
Yes.
We do that already. We do that.
We do that?
Yeah.
On commercial.
Construction or additional square footage added, there's 1% housing excise tax.
Oh, that's well.
It's not proportional.
And then my second question is, when you're talking about figuring out the housing needs 10, 20 years out. Oregon just became the state with the least birth rate. So I'm wondering, when people are looking at the population increase, which is what you'd be looking at to decide on housing, how we've factored in migration, dropping birth rate, ultimately, we're all old, and all of those things.
Yes, so basically, Oregon has been a very fast growing state, as you know, for the last 30, 40 years. And only in the last, really since the pandemic, have we seen decline in growth. You're absolutely right that as a population Oregon wide, we are getting older, not younger, right? And frankly, that's a national trend, but it's extra acute in Oregon. The way the need is determined is basically by doing, the state economist does a population and employment forecast every biennium, I think. And then those are allocated out by populations of cities and counties geographically. And so we actually have a population and employment forecast for Clatsop County that's being done. And it does show that there are some modest rates of growth projected, especially in Warrenton, actually, which is the fastest growing city in Clatsop County. And so, we need housing for seniors, right? We need housing for different populations. And so that's how the needs are allocated, is by looking at the population and employment forecast that the state economist does and then allocates out to local jurisdictions.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next. Carmen?
Carmen Swiger, PO Box 214, Cannon Beach, Oregon, 97110. My question is, in reference to the issue that the city is already taxing people for when they are coming to get a permit. So how long have we been doing that?
Since 2017,
Okay,
I believe.
yeah. Has that been used towards affordable housing?
Yes, we had one applicant, I can't think of his name.
The Sea Lark.
Yeah,
Taylor.
CLARC used it when they increased their multifamily housing. And they used that for, I believe, SDCs and connection fees. And so it has been utilized once.
Once.
Yes.
So it's I don't know what the percentage is, but is it just an individual? What is the goal to help people for that? So what is the requirements? Or you do not have any requirements to help to use that money?
So Oregon state law set requirements for how it can be used. I think I have it written down. So there it's
Construction excise.
yeah. Do you know what?
Well, it's a construction excise tax, right? So there are rules about how you can use it for basically infrastructure development. I don't know the exact law.
So it so 50, okay, it's used, the city's portion that we keep is to fund developer incentives allowed or offered and for programs and incentives of the city related to affordable housing.
Yes, I just want to know how successful the program has been. So because evidently it was very good to start it, but we also have to evaluate or keep track of how the money is used to see if it is efficient, if it's really solving the situation that created it. And that is my concern. Because I didn't know, but I was also questioning how many people has been helped. So there has to be a balance of what we request from people who is buying their or building their houses, and how we are using the money that they pay, thinking that is going to go for affordable housing. So there has to be a kind of a balance and evaluation, and then let the people know how their money has been using, so that we do not think, oh, we have the money, but I have no idea how it was using. Okay, and like, for example, as we didn't know, I am a full-time resident, been living here for 50 years or more. I didn't know that. So that is just a suggestion, and kind of bringing you to think about it. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Tim?
Tim Rainey, PO Box 429, Cannon Beach. I like to do numbers. Lisa made a comment a few minutes ago, Councilor Curry, I'm sorry, I should say. That those people who own second homes here are never going to rent them, and that truer words have never been spoken. But let's just say you could force them into selling their houses. Right now, I ran this math weeks ago, looked at everything on Zillow. I think there were 19 things on Zillow. 5 or so of them were fractional ownership or land. So there was like 14 real houses. There were only 2 that were under $1 million. And the median price, if you excluded the one house that's for $6.5 million. So I tried to take the mean price, sorry, not the median, was $2.4 million. It's pretty hard to find anything in Cannon Beach for less than $1,000 a square foot right now. So let's just say magically we cut that in half. Let's say those $1 million houses became $500,000 houses. I did the math just now. To support that, you would be paying $33,000 a year in interest. You run the calculation for affordable, multiply that by, or divide that by 0.3, you need $100,000 to afford a mortgage of $400,000. You need $100,000 of income to afford a mortgage of $400,000, assuming you have the 20% down and it was a $500,000 house. So we can forget about the idea of ever turning those second homes into incremental housing supply. What we need to do is figure out how to create new supply. And certainly ADU, we can do better than we have. We built only 8 ADUs in the past 3 years. Part of that is it's hard to do in this town. We put people through design review for ADU. We put people through, in R2, you can build duplexes in Cannon Beach. That's on the books right now. But it goes through design review. How many of those get built? Very many. So we need to declutter, streamline the process for duplexes, for ADUs. We talked about the 1973 Tom McCall bill, which was brilliant and made Oregon what it is. But there's 2 sides to that. One side is EFU, no houses inside the urban growth boundary, high density. And you can't say, well, we're only going to allow 5-acre zoning here or whatever. You have to have density inside the urban growth boundary. And that's really the name of the game here. So streamlining ADUs, allowing duplexes, and then let's think about that RV park, because that's land that we own. We could do something with. We could bring money into the city and create 100 housing sites at least. And you determine, because you get to do the zoning. You get to say, okay, 40 of those 100 are going to be affordable housing. And you put those deed restrictions on and they run with the land.
And who builds them?
The developer you sell it to. So I think you spoke exactly to this point. You control it. You control the zoning. You get RFPs for developers. The developer will say, I'd pay $10 million for that 12-acre parcel if there were no restrictions on it, but you put a whole bunch of restrictions that I need to build affordable housing. It's now only worth $3 million to me. And you say, yippee, I'll take the $3 million. You go build that housing. It's not hard. It's a public-private partnership, and it can work out really well for this city.
Thank you.
On that streamlined process you're talking about, and this is anecdotally, you had mentioned Bend. I see a lot of ADUs going in Bend.
Yep.
I mean, I'm amazed at the number of ADUs that I've seen. And they have a streamlined pre-approved process for building ADUs.
I just find it hard to believe that going to the design review board is what's stopping people from building ADUs. I don't buy that at all.
Okay, remember, we're in public comment. We're
Oh.
gonna get a chance
Okay.
to talk a little bit later. Jen?
Jan Siebert Warman, P O Box 778. I am totally in support of workforce housing. I am concerned about how we decide to do it. I think it's going to take, as many people have said, a combination of ideas and ways that we go about it. One thing I wanted to bring up in regard to density, I am concerned about how congested our town already feels to, maybe it's just me, but people who have lived here a while. I'm concerned also about our protecting our trees, our green space and our open space. And one idea that I've recently been able to read about is something someone termed flex housing. This was the idea, as I understand it, whereby people who own homes could decide to remodel their homes and at least a portion of their homes, the interiors, and they could rent out a part of their property to long-term tenants and then reserve the rest for other uses. And I wish that we could look into this idea and we could give incentives to people to do that, because with all the second homes that we have here, I'm sure there would be some people who would want to have this program if we could develop that here. I believe also we need to restrict our STRs, our short-term rentals, which is less than 30 days for people to rent, to 200. I think we've got about 200 now. I would not like to see any more short-term rentals allowed. And if any of those 200 that we have now would turn over, we could have a waiting list, which I think the council has talked about for people who want to come in at a later time. I support all kinds of financial incentives to help with all these different ideas. And anyway, I think we just need to really protect our environment and give our workforce housing, but we need to be really very cognizant about a balance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good, gentleman in the back.
Hi, my name is Richard Costa, PO Box 656. Just first thing, reducing your short-term housing is a problem. You don't want to do that. That takes houses off the market and makes the rents go up. So if you have 200 available, then for long-term, I mean, when you have more short-term housing, then people can rent and that will drive the rents down, because a long-term housing have to keep up with that short-term housing price. So limiting your short-term housing is a really, really bad idea. Other company-owned housing is also a really, really bad idea, particularly if it's a private company. Not such a bad idea if it's a public company, but I mean, you're basically making a company town like West Virginia coal miners, and if that company goes bust, you kill your town. And plus, they can abuse the employee. They don't have any rights. Their housing is tied to their employment. That's an awful idea. As far as mixed zoning goes, or zoning goes, you mentioned a bunch of duplexes and all of that. The other thing, I mean, mixed use is I mean, the densest place, I guess India might be higher, but I lived in Tokyo for a while. I mean, they have extremely dense population. And I mean, you can have a mom and pop grocery store right next to a skyscraper. I mean, you just walk down the street. You can have mixed use. For here, it would probably only be artists and hairdressers. I don't know, but I mean, if the business and the house are in one place, that's okay. I mean, I've even seen it in there's a place in Fremont. It was a restaurant, and so they lived in the house, but it was also a restaurant. So that's one way of increasing your housing. As far as affording your rent, the easiest way probably for those really poor people is raising the minimum wage. If you mandate a $20 minimum wage, you immediately made those people's lives better. Now, obviously, that's gonna have inflationary pressures, but for most retail businesses, their employees are at 25% of their costs. So you're only raising it by whatever the delta between they're making now, most of them are probably making 15 now. So you're taking 25% of $5 an hour, and that's your inflationary increase. So you're making their lives better at a small inflationary increase. So that's one way to go about it. It's not the only way, but yeah, that rental change, I mean, just limiting your short-term houses is just really bad because you're taking away potential renters, because basically you make it so people, like, as you said, like they just become second homes because you can no longer afford to do it, and it's not worth the effort. That's really bad. They did ask a question at the very beginning about what we'd like to see in infrastructure. I would like to see our electricity grid. I don't know what causes the problem. I don't know why we lose electricity all the time, but we got typhoons in Japan and the power never went out. The only time it ever went out was when I went through that 9.4 tsunami. Yes, the power went out and was out for like a day. But that was the only time I was over there that the power went out. So I don't know why our power goes out routinely. So I would like that infrastructure. I don't know what that involves, but that's the one infrastructure piece I would like to see fixed. Going to your point about carrots and sticks and interest rates, one way you could go about that, you charge basically and on to your point too, on the second homes, charge them a hit for keeping it empty, but then waiving it if it's a long-term rental. So, you know, if it's a second home or a non-owner occupied property, you charge an additional on the property tax, but then waive it if it's being used as a long-term rental. So that gives you the carrot and the stick, because the stick is gonna be more effective every time. But I mean, the carrot can kind of make that go away a little bit. So it gives them a little bit of encouragement.
Okay, can you wrap it up, please?
Yeah, I probably have other things, but I'll leave that for now. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next.
I'm Paul at PO Box 1262. I'll try and keep it short, and if I jump around, I'm a little nervous. Nervous. I like never get out of the house. I've never really cared about town activities. I've been here since 2007. Lived in a lot of different housing. Kind of like density. That doesn't, like, in some places here, you have like literally you'll have like 8, 9 people in one house because people want to work here. There's a little bit of a wage gap here between some of us sitting here and like, I'd say like 10 people in this room. Like some of us are literally stuck here because like rent, okay, I gotta say, sorry. The density's just got like, don't worry about density or keep it. It's like people are packed here to literally pay their bills and stay alive. I'm not trying to like name drop, because like I said, I don't know people, but like there's even there's a construction, or it's not a construction, it's, I would guess like a apartments going up or now renting down on the south end of town, wanting like close to $3,000 for like a very small place to live. And I don't know how taxes money, I don't know where or how any of that works. But it's like, I don't know who politely you guys think lives here. Like the people that have these houses and like, I'm trying to say, a lot of us that kind of keep this place going are the ones like we clean your toilets, we make your food, we drive your ambulances. There needs to be I don't know if there's like a different task force, kind of like with making calls about getting some kind of like renters assistance, like we kind of need to get going on that, because like and then even the houses, I don't know who well, so the question, is there, I know the CLARC, I believe, is workforce housing. Is there is the apartments by the fire station, are those is that work assisted, or do you know who runs those? Yeah.
Pelican owns them.
Oh, no, not the ones on Sunset. I'm talking like, up behind Sleepy Monk. Sorry, I don't mind roads. I've lived here forever.
One's right behind us.
Sundog.
Okay, well, whoever, like, I think those must be rent controlled, or whoever's.
Sherwood.
Yeah, it is.
Is that done by, again, sorry, I don't know. Is that done by even the city? Again?
I think it's.
I think he's talking
No,
about
the-
the
I
ones
know-
that
I
are
know.
just north of the fire
Yeah. that-
department,
Like, right.
which I think they're
Like,
private,
Okay,
aren't
that's
right?
other, because even the affordable ones, because then even getting into quality of housing that is here is like, the what?
It's atrocious.
Yes, I was gonna say, it's like, I don't think a lot of us have been inside of trap houses, but like that place, like, I had a friend that moved, we literally had to scrape, like, even the homes that people are living in are insane. And then people get sick, and then people miss work, and then you can't pay, like, there needs to be a special assistance. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, you'll get a chance to talk.
Well, yeah, that's kind of what a lot of us are saying the same thing here. And then just to even. Actually, no, I'll just wrap it up there, because I feel like a few other people have something to say. It's like
Thank you.
tax force, if anything can. Something's got, I mean. Been talking about this for a long time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Next, sure.
Hi, my name's Kendra. I have lived in PO Box 886, Cannon Beach. I have been here,
And last names.
Kendra Edwards.
Thank you.
I've been here since April 2021. I have been in all sides of this housing debate, and that's why I'm here. This is my first council meeting, and I'm so glad I came. Thank you all for your opinions, and your presentation was amazing. I hold a law degree, and I like a lot of the things you said. I don't use it. So I just want to not solve your problems at all. I don't have that ability. I want to share my story and bring up one thing that wasn't addressed with the housing, and I think that's seasonal workers. Because during the summertime, we get a lot more people here. And we need those people here working for us, with us. And Pelican has that hotel set up for J1 people, for seasonal workers and for temporary employees until they can find other houses. That's a can of worms with them too. They don't want to be landlords, it sucks. And but most places can't get J1 workers because they can't provide them the housing here. So they have to get somebody like Pelican, who is their host, and then they can get a second job off of those people if they want to work 24 hours a day, and most of them do, which is sad. So I would like to address the seasonal workers. I have offered to let several of them stay at my house just because they have no other option. And same with the bad weather, when the roads suck, you know, people don't have a place to go, they can stay at my house. I will tell you how I got my house. I am not rich, and I don't care to be. But I came here to kind of restart my life. I didn't know I was gonna move here. I got a 30-day rental. That was the only like rental I could get in July, was a 30-day rental. And I went there to kind of restart my life a little bit and decided I didn't want to leave. I really like it here. And so I asked that landlord if she would just take it off Airbnb. I'll still pay her the same. We both lose those fees. And I'll stay in your house and it will be occupied all this time, because with a 30-day minimum rental license, she has that place sitting empty. And it's a duplex. So the place next to it is also attached to that license, and it has a different, like, one can be a 3-day, one can be a 30-day. If the 3-day one goes, it has to be 2 weeks between another one. I don't know how that works. I'm sure you do. But I am moving somebody from California up here to be a worker and open a business here with me. And he's gonna rent out the other side, and she's taking it off Airbnb completely. And so she needs to get tax breaks for providing housing for workers. It is expensive and it is not nice. But it is in Cannon Beach. I don't have to commute and I can walk to work. And I want to live here. I love it. But it is a big issue and I intend to do big things here and I want it addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Next.
Alan Barber, PO Box 801. This is really just information gathering for me. I have some quick question, just trying to get all my facts straight. There is a certain number of acreage on the east side of 101 that the city owns, is that correct?
Southwind.
Is there anything that we're planning on doing as far as housing on that side of the highway? I know that's, you know, where the police station is going to go, but is there anything in the works as far as residential?
That was one of the reasons I was asking about the infrastructure money, because the big problem is there's no infrastructure there and there's some
Steep
some
slopes.
slide and slope, and so there's some issues, but I expect that's gonna be something that we would talk about.
Okay, yeah, I just wasn't sure. I knew that there was some amount of acreage on the other side, and so thank you, I appreciate it.
Thanks.
I'm gonna move the podium. We got a request to move it because they can't see the speaker on Zoom.
Okay. Now we're gonna get lots of speakers.
Now nobody's gonna come up.
No, Jason. Next. Go ahead.
Jay Orla, PO Box 563, and Beach. I am a long-term renter here. My business is here. 75% of my business is generated here out of Cannon Beach. I am thankful to fall into the workforce housing category, but my rent is roughly about 37% of my income. You guys have a big challenge ahead of you. Mostly it's location. That's speaking to a lot of these people in regards to workforce or low income. We have roughly 2 low income generating divisions here. The one behind here, we have the Pelican, which is roughly 20 units, I believe. The one behind us is maybe 40, 50 units. It does not suffice what we need, for sure. Your location, I agree with Councilman her that we are not going to get any of those 1,100 people to break free of their homes for rent long term. It's just not going to happen. They fall into an income bracket well beyond what we are, and the chances of them maybe even 10% giving up their homes for a long term rental is not going to happen. So it is, where are we going to go? RV Park was mentioned. I can't 100% agree with that. That's a $3 million profit for this city every year. I live right across the street from it. I see people staying in there all the time. My in-laws come and stay for a week. They do not eat out of their camper. They come into the city to buy food. You take that away, you're not just losing the income from the RV park, you're losing the income from the Pelican, from businesses in town. So I caution you there. Southtown, we're up against our boundaries. There's not a whole lot there. Northtown, we're in wetlands. There's nothing there. Our main infrastructure is 50 by 100 lots. They are not going to support a duplex. So the next obvious place is, as mentioned, is the east side of 101. Where our cash is, where the police department is going to go. I know there's going to be certain infrastructure problems there due to topography, not having any infrastructure in there at all. But I think that's where we need to focus our attention to, because there are not open lot inventory that will support even a duplex roughly in this town right now. I have seen in my business in design and architecture, I've seen you guys open up to the ADUs quite a bit in the past couple of years, and I appreciate that. Anyone who comes to me and says they want to do an ADU, I hop on it. I say, let's go, let's do this. We have found that there have been certain challenges getting through the city to do that, but I don't think they're roadblocks. They're negatable. I think if we work together, we can get these things to happen. And we have. You've given me, you've provided some of my clients availability to get above the FAR or lot coverage. There's got to be some sort of give and take within there. And that sort of goes along with what Jan was saying, that we have to find the sort of balance of where are our short-term rentals, what are our long-term rentals? And knowing that 1,100 of these unoccupied homes are never going to free up. Really, I know you guys are trying and you want to do this, and I encourage you very much to do this. And sort of looking at the availability of where we can densify. It's not going to happen within the west side of 101. I just don't see that in that availability of land portions of it. So when it does come time to decide where, please look at the east side of 101. We see it down in Arch Cape. They're starting to develop on the east side of 101 and also down towards Manzanita as well. Let's take opportunity of that public land available to incentivize.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's like you're missing a kid.
Is that coming from the audience or?
No, it's
On Zoom. Someone isn't muted, I think.
I just muted him.
You, Robert. Other speakers? Tim, you already
It's
spoke.
impossible to just correct a number on that last presentation.
Do it quickly.
Yeah. So Kim Ramey, PO Box 429. I'm on the city's budget committee. I'm pretty familiar with the numbers. The $3 million number is not correct. For this year and for fiscal 23, the city will bring $300,000 into its general fund from the RV park. The 5-year average through 2003 was 192,000, I believe. So it's not a big chunk of money from the RV park.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Okay, we're going to go to Zoom participants. Go ahead and raise your hand if you'd like to speak.
There are two. There are three.
Okay. So Zoom user, could you unmute and tell us your name and mailing address? Did you go to Zoom user?
I brought him up.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I didn't look down. So if you want to speak, you have to unmute and you're going to give us your name and mailing address, please. Going once, going twice.
Rusty usually unmutes you if you're on Zoom.
Right.
They can't do it themselves.
Right. And
I gave him.
Robert's allowed. Oh, yeah. I know how this works. Okay, going to go to our next speaker then. And then Amber,
Hi,
go ahead.
I'm Amber Fowler, PO Box 657. One of the things that I've been listening into this meeting, and I want to comment on the fact that I think that it's important for us to consider that we need diversified and different housing options rather than the stark opposition of workforce or multi-million-dollar homes. We need more than middle housing. We need, and workforce housing, to me, I don't know how other people feel about this, but is highly offensive. It's as if people that work in our town should only be able to live in a 300 or 500 square foot place because that's all they're worth. It just seems horrifically offensive. So I'd like us to consider the fact that we need diversified housing options to account for the different economic and socioeconomic ranges that we have in our town, which is diverse. Not as diverse as we might like, but it is diverse. And so I'd like us to be thinking about the way that we can account for and make space for the different people that we have in our town beyond just the stark contrasts of really, really wealthy and people at the lowest end. I just encourage that kind of dialogue, for one. The second thing that I would like to ask is we talk about having task force, we talk about the short-term rental that exist in Cannon Beach. I think that we're using a bunch of numbers that aren't accurate, and I'd love to know what we're doing to actually have a realistic and accurate pulse on legal and illegal short-term rentals, the ones that show up on Instagram for rent, the ones that are not on Airbnb, the ones that are being done through Facebook, the ones that are being doing through Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. I feel like we don't have a handle on that. And so therefore we're not talking about the situation in factual figures. And that's frustrating too, because I feel like this is a really big issue. It's getting a handle on short-term rentals. It's getting a handle on empty housing inventory. It's getting a handle on increasing the new inventory that we have. It's changing our zoning. So it's a really big issue, but I don't have a sense for us having a process around each one of those different categories. And I'm wondering whether or not it's being thought of that way. So I guess that's my question.
Okay, thank you.
Is there an answer?
We are looking at it. Yes, we are. Okay, next. Urban and Tammy. Tammy and her.
Hi.
Hi.
Herb Fleur, P.O. Box 546, Cannon Beach, Oregon. And first I want to thank the mayor and the council for being here tonight and listening. And Alyssa, and I hope I said the name right, for a really great job of going through the numbers and presenting. And I also want to say, I think we can all agree that we have to do something in the city, the county, the state, and the whole country about housing. But I think there's some real misperceptions about, at least in Cannon Beach, about short-term rentals that seem to continue. Some of the numbers presented tonight about median housing and median income. The housing in Cannon Beach is double what it is in the county. It's about $945,000 for the median house in Cannon Beach. When you go through all the numbers, and I'm not going to bother with that right now, but this is not really an affordable town, unfortunately, for a lot of people. So how do we go about dealing with that? I think it's really unrealistic that the dichotomy of the cost of housing versus the cost of income for affordable housing here in Cannon Beach can be met given the cost of property. Unless we start looking at other things, looking at government-private cooperations, city to city, city to county cooperations, property outside the city. It was raised, I think, earlier that, what could the city do to buy property in town and deal with this? Well, there's not much property left in town. So I think it was also a gentleman raised a good point earlier that west of 101, what are we going to do? East of 101, how much does the city own? And I heard some things that frankly trouble me and should trouble all of you. And how do you deal with it? Are you going to tax a second home? Are you going to tax an empty home? The legalities of those, I don't know. How do you go about it? An empty home, how are you going to monitor an empty home? Some of these seem unrealistic to me. So again, really appreciate all your work. Really think this is an important topic. Hope we can all continue to work on this together, but I hope that some of these misperceptions will be seen with the perspective that in Cannon Beach, if you own a home that's worth $1 million, that's not going to be rented out long-term. So short-term rentals in fact, have very little to do with the impact of housing here in town. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next on Zoom. You have to raise your hand if you want to speak.
No.
And I'm not calling on Michelle because she's on design review. You'll get a chance, you'll get another chance to speak.
Wait, did you
Michelle.
say my name?
I did. but
Oh, yeah. Hi, sorry.
but Michelle, we're
This
letting
is-
the,
yes.
we're letting the public speak right now, and then
No, I have a bunch of people here with me again. So if they are on my Zoom, so well, not a
okay,
bunch.
so they
3
need to
people.
come, they need to speak as individuals.
They can speak as individuals on my iPad.
Okay.
Okay, I'm
Let's
handing
get-
it to the first
let's get-
person.
Okay.
Hello, thank you for being here this evening. My name is Jessica Alexander, PO Box 1148 here in Cannon Beach. I just want to say housing for me, growing up, living here, being born and raised in this county and experiencing so many housing struggles and so many housing challenges well through even right now is really disheartening. My parents had really silly jobs that paid not very much, and they were able to buy a home in this county. And then just experiencing making ungodly amounts of money more than they had, and not being able to even rent a house without working 2 jobs is criminal, in my opinion. It hurts and it sucks, but I love it here. I love my community. I love raising my son in the town that my mom and myself were raised in. Like, this is my home. This is his home. And feeling like I'm getting shoved out every month in some way or another, and not knowing whether or not I'm going to get to stay in the home that I've been renting and raising my son in for the last 5 years. Like, it's very disheartening and it's really scary every day, not knowing whether the person that I rent from is going to decide to do short-term rentals or tear my house down and build their own home for them to come live in. There's no security living here. I moved probably 4 or 5 times during the pandemic, and at one point had to live in my mom's dining room. And it was with utter grace that she let me stay with her and love. And I was so thankful for that. But not having anywhere to go and not having even an option is terrifying, being a mother who wants to live and continue working and building this community. It's a beautiful place filled with beautiful people. And I don't want to feel forced out every time I open my front door. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jessica.
Okay, I'm handing it over to Anne Marie now.
Yeah, you are. Hi, my name is Anne Marie Radich, PO Box 583, Cannon Beach. And I just want to express my concern for the housing situation in Cannon Beach. I've lived here since 1995. And I've been sitting here trying to tally up how many different houses / cabins / couches I've lived in and on since 1995. And I know I've forgotten some, but there are at least 21 in less than 28 years. And that is because many times they have decided to tear down the structure that was long-term rental for many years and build a ginormous home that no one's ever in, or raise the rent to something that I'm not able to pay. And it's a beautiful community, as Jessica just said. It's wonderful in so many ways. And as a business owner and longtime resident, it's kind of mind-boggling. I didn't realize it would be 21 or more places that I've lived in just under 28 years. And I think that that is concerning on very, very, very many levels. And I know that there's a lot of people who are less fortunate than I am. I've been able to find places most of the time. I have had to move to Seaside or Wheeler because I couldn't afford the place I was in, or like I said, it was going to be torn down. But it's also alarming how many places that I did live in that were long-time rentals that ended up being torn down to put up basically what I call McMansions that are rarely used. And I think it's a huge concern. I don't know the answer, but I really think that we need to figure it out. And so I thank you for listening, and I hope as a community we can figure this out. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it. It wasn't a bunch of people. It was two.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Okay, anyone else on Zoom?
We have.
Go ahead.
We have Patricia.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pat Durkin here. Let's see. Closed captioning transcript is being generated. Okay. Pat Durkin. So Jessica and Anne Marie bring up one of the things that is so disturbing to me is that we as a community are floundering. You know, it's like this is a key point around housing, is that we need all age groups of people living here to support this community. And it was extremely fortunate in 1992 to get a farm home loan to be able to be in the home that I'm in. And my daughters have been raised in, and it's so wonderful. It's so amazing because I love it here. I love it here. And this being on the precipice of, I don't even know what you want to call it. It feels like doom in a way, that we are have lost a lot of, I would say, my 36-year-old daughter's age group, because they couldn't have a home here. They couldn't raise their kids here. They needed to, they had, some of them had small businesses. There has been a exodus of that age group, which is really sad, because when I moved here in 1982, so I've been here for, 40 years, over 40 years. And I was amazed by it was just amazing here. It still is amazing here, though, of course, things have changed over these years. It's like, I just would like to see and know that it is workforce housing, whatever, we need housing for everyone. We need housing for every person that would like to be part of this community. And there was a young woman who spoke earlier who said that she had stayed here for 30 days and wanted to stay here, and she wants to be really productive here. We need that energy. We need that energy. And if they come here, if this younger group of people, or even the ones that are already here, cannot stay here, and we lose that energy, what does this produce? This produces a community of second homes, of, what do they call that? A bedroom community, which is such an interesting term, but true. Who's going to man the retail shops? Who's going to take care of the hotels? Who's going to be in the restaurants? There's so many reasons to get this housing situation opened up and to get the help that we need. And I will have to say, I'm sorry that it didn't happen more a lot earlier. I was on the CDC when the Shorewood and the Elk Creek Terrace were built, and the houses that were built up across from Coaster Properties. And, what a great thing that happened. What a great thing that happened to provide that amount of housing in both of them small spaces relatively. And I don't know, I hope I made some sense. Just like, I just. Oh.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, anyone else on Zoom? And I'm gonna go to the audience after we make sure Zoom is taken care of. Anyone else on Zoom? Okay, then we'll go ahead and open it up again to people in the audience that haven't spoken. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Frank Farrell, PO Box 981. I manage the Shorewood Apartments here in Cannon Beach. And I wasn't going to talk. I was really interested in getting information, and that was the reason that I came. But it occurs to me, and I'll be brief, but I can speak to what our demand is from daily experience. Just to give you a few numbers, currently my wait list for 1-bedroom apartments, and I only have 8 of them, has 105 applicants on it. The person at the top of that list has been waiting for a 1-bedroom apartment at Shorewood since 2011.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I always get a wow when I share that. My 2-bedroom wait list currently has only 13 applicants on it. I have 23 of those units, and they circulate a little faster, but that's still probably a 3 to 4 year wait if everybody on that list is available and wants to move in at the point.
So rent on that 2-bedroom.
My rent is very complicated. Give me a call and we can talk about it. The reason I say that is because we have subsidies. People tend to pay 30% of their income.
But you'll be very happy to answer those questions.
Oh, yeah, please. My 3 bedrooms also have about 13 people on them. I only turn over maybe 1 or 2 of those a year though. So that's still a 6 or 7 year wait.
How many 3-bedroom?
I have about 8 3-bedrooms, yeah.
Okay.
So demand is high, and I have this conversation about the need probably between 5 and 10 times a day. Every once in a while, somebody's like, well, I'm going to go ahead and apply anyway, but most people are very disheartened.
Yeah.
We need more. We need a lot more. The other thing is that I see with the people that move in, it's more than just providing the housing. The services are a big part of it. I have a lot of people who are older, don't drive, can't drive, don't have vehicles, and just getting groceries is a huge challenge. Especially because of our bus system, the way it is. So I would like to hope that somewhere in this process, we think not just about putting roofs over heads, but making sure that when people have that roof, they're in an environment where they're going to be able to be successful.
Thank you.
That's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Larry. Okay, go ahead.
I'm Jen Yee, PO Box 138. Sorry, I'm late to the meeting. I was actually just at another one across the street about sea levels rising.
Yeah.
And erosion, so kind of feels in a way, some sort of theme here where I feel like the Cannon Beach community in many ways, because of housing and services, I feel a lot of erosion, even personally. I know a lot of people in the room. I've been here, I can't believe, almost 7 years now. Kind of here by happenstance due to the surf and things like that, but thankful for people, and you probably know Margot in the community, and like Morgan and Beth, who were able to rent a place to me while I was here. I didn't expect to stay by any means. It was a fun summer and here now. And I've been able to stay because they had affordable place for me to go. And my partner Joey and my dog Toto, you've probably seen us around. I'm 32 years old, and I think a lot of the conversation gets put around the workforce. I don't work actually in Cannon Beach. I work as an executive producer, so I'm a working professional. I've worked for 11 years in film, photo production commercials on a large scale for brands like Columbia Outerwear and a lot of the brands in Portland and Oregon you've seen, like Pendleton. So I'm by no means starving when it comes to salary and things like that, but there is no way in hell that I can afford to live in Cannon Beach, even as a working professional. And we'll probably move out of this community shortly because I did just buy a house in Wheeler over this past year. And the cheapest thing I could find in Cannon Beach and looking over 7 years, even with some family support, was just under $800,000. And when I looked at it, there is no way that we could really live even in that kind of accommodation just for family planning and moving into my mid-30s and things like that. So I'm sad to say that, but I have to represent the 30-something community. I have a small business in Cannon Beach downtown. I'd love to keep that going, but we truly can't afford to stay. And hopefully, our rent, Mike and Beth and everybody help us be able to stay here. So the security of whether or not they may want to age in place or be in a smaller home is always at risk. And I was happy that we could secure something within the North Coast, but I would hate to leave this community. My neighbors, we're close to all the children that are here, and a lot of those families are getting pushed out. We're still renting after, 15 plus years raising their children here. That are now moving to those adults are in their 40s, 50s. But I just think you're really losing a lot of people you need here. I came in like bright-eyed, happy to help this community. I was in, DRB for 4.5 years, and I'd be sad to leave. So hopefully that represents this 30-something community that wants to stay, but we can't afford it. Not unless we make over $1 million or whatever it is. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience? And one more time, anybody else on Zoom? Okay, thanks everyone for your comments, for being kind and respectful participants. And now the design review and planning and city council can continue our discussion. So, who would like to start?
Well, I have a question,
Okay,
and this is a question for Aaron. Are you there, Aaron?
Aaron
Matusnik, yeah. Aaron, are you there?
Yeah, Lisa, I'm here. Hi.
Okay, hi. I have a question for you because you're in the, know a lot about the building business. And I'm curious, do you think, in your opinion, would a builder or contractor or developer rather buy a piece of land like the RV park with as a private project with a deed restriction attached to it saying it had to be for workforce or middle income housing? Do you think that is realistic or not?
I think anything's realistic with the right incentives, with the right, tax credits and whatever other grants and incentives that developer could achieve through HUD, Oregon Housing and Community Services. Sure. I mean, anything's possible. Is it realistic? Given what the cost, that particular property, I have all sorts of thoughts about that. This probably isn't the right forum for it, but, I think, sure. The short answer is yes, I think anything's possible. And, like we heard earlier, this is the time. Governments, the state has money. This is Governor Kotek's #1 issue. So we have to go out and lobby and get the money. So
that already has infrastructure. So it's not an infrastructure issue. The RV park already has water and electricity and all that stuff.
Well, I think it would have to be upgrade. I mean, again, I don't know exactly, but I believe it would have to be upgraded substantially to put a housing development back in there.
Okay, just curious. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, something like Southwind that's, right off of the road and it's bare and has access to the utilities, I think would probably be an easier project depending on, I guess, the geotechnical side of things. But yeah, I think any raw land in Cannon Beach is ripe for development, but we're going to run into the same problems that we already run into. God forbid a tree has to come down, or there's going to be impediments to any type of change in the city. Sitting on these commissions, we see it more than anyone. We can barely, it takes us years to rewrite the code that we know desperately needs rewritten. So there's always going to be opposition. I don't think anything happens fast unless we streamline the processes and really push for this to happen.
Okay, thanks.
Who'd like to go next?
I would, I'm more confused now than I was when I started, but we need to dig in. What's the next step? I mean, I hear us talking about all this. I don't know what Marcy has planned. Works or what the code audit's going to come up with. We have talked about housing now for 2 years since I've been on the commission. We actually had language, but I think it probably was deficient because it just didn't address a broad enough spectrum of issues. But what's the next step? We've only been able to make progress on code revisions, notwithstanding Marcy and her work's good efforts on critical things by taking them internally and not assigning, but asking for volunteers to start working issues. And to me, with the information we've had today, great information, it's time.
It is.
And so, out of this, I'd like to have an idea of how we want to drive this forward. As opposed to say we're working at, and the reality is, there's a lot of inertia. So is there a stomach for starting another task force to look at these issues with Marcy and other people who are
a focus group?
Right.
That's what we call them.
Focus
group. Yes.
I thought it was what do we call it, Lisa? Beer and wine?
Coffee.
Peanuts and coffee.
Focus group.
Focus group. Yes, a focus group.
Except, well, I mean, I wish, I would love to have Chet Moritz speak to this whole group again too, as well, because he had some amazing information that he gave us about federal programs for actually home ownership on city-owned land that is run by a nonprofit, and it really knows how to what the mechanism is, so he understands the mechanism for setting that up. And so I just would like, I mean, that's one idea. I'm not saying we should take necessarily the whole RV park and turn it into housing, but maybe just start with a few units just to see how it works, to see if it's actually successful, to see if it's a possibility. And I think would be a great first step.
It would be. It would be. There are others. We have code holes. I would like to tweak the definition of duplex. I think it was intended to give us middle housing. It doesn't. It needs some work.
Yeah, but not, I mean, a lot of people don't want to build a duplex on a 50 by 100 lot. They just don't want to. I mean, how do you make them want to?
Just give our people who are interested the option.
Is there in our
and an option that is acceptable to a community looking for middle housing.
Yeah, I think that the option is there right now.
Except that it tends to give us 2 luxury homes that are going to go into condominiums.
Yeah, well, that's the problem.
So that's low hanging fruit for us.
So you have to stop, there has to be a way to stop that and do and people essentially into a position where they have to do the second idea. I'm not sure exactly what the mechanism for that is.
I'd
And-
like to interrupt this conversation of
Michelle,
duplex.
Michelle, we're letting everyone speak, so wait your
Well, I feel
turn.
like we're going into
Wait.
the wetlands now.
Wait your turn, please. Go ahead and continue, Michelle, or Lisa.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm certainly not talking about going into wetlands, if that's. what
Okay.
I think I'm
Sorry,
talking about.
I apologize.
The RV park right now is already built out, the RV park itself, and it has electricity and water and, other infrastructure in it. I'm not even talking about having to cut down a tree necessarily, because we already have those little the campsites for those giant RVs are already there. So you have that already. You have the space. You don't have to cut down trees. You don't have to go into wetlands, but you have space that is just to see how it works, to see what the mechanism is. If it's a possibility, I think that's a good way to start.
Okay, Michelle, it's your turn.
So sorry about that. I feel like I've just been to so many of those meetings. We've been talking about creating like an ad hoc type committee for affordable housing, and I'd love to do that. Like, step forward. This seems like a really good opportunity right now, and we already have a few people that have volunteered, and I'd love the opportunity to like actually start this like right now. This seems like a really good, I don't know, not right now, but like talk about it. I would love for us to like talk to people that are actually renters and not all just homeowners, talking about people that, I mean, the renters know what our problems are. And I mean, I'm looking at all of you right now, and I think most of you that I'm looking at all own your homes. So having an ad hoc committee of people that are renters and workers, whether they, that was one of the things with your survey you put out. I'm not sure if you actually were able to, because I was actually going to go around and personally go and hand it to different hotels, and because I know a lot of people did not get it because they don't live here and they don't have a PO box here. So they're like, what survey? So just having like that happen. But yeah, so I'd love to actually, we talked about it a little bit at a couple meetings where we're talking about having an ad hoc, I mean, is that the right word? I'm not sure if I'm using that word, committee.
Focus group. And Michelle?
Yeah.
I'm going to interrupt you now.
Yeah, please. I deserve it.
The survey is open for another week.
Yeah, I'm going to do it.
We need data. So please.
Yeah, well, I like Jess, who's here, she works at the Stephanie and at Bill's, and nobody at that works there have gotten this survey, and a good chunk of them don't actually live in Cannon Beach or even the county. So, I've been trying to like get it out, send it to different people. So I'd love to get more.
Please do that and encourage other people to.
Yeah. So yeah, if we could actually, I don't know who to talk to about starting a committee, an extra committee, because that's what I need is another committee. But that would be great. I think that just getting us talking about people that are actually being affected, not just talking about when it's whatever, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but to be effective, it would really help for the people who were part of the committee to familiarize themselves with the code that we have now and what our FAR is now and what lot coverage is now. And so that when we do the code audit and there may be changes coming forward, that they would understand what those changes are and have some really constructive input. And in other words, not just saying what you need, but understanding a little bit better how to get there just by familiarizing yourself with a lot of the information that's.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, I think that that's definitely like a conversation that needs to be had. I mean, you're talking about the RV park, and I'm sitting next to Jess, who knows a weird amount about the RV park because she grew up there. So I'm like, oh, she knows a ton about it. So, I mean, this comes up a lot, and I think that it's been studied or tested a million times that like you can't actually build on the RV park because it'll sink because it used to be a dump. So, I mean, I don't know enough about it, but I do think that I mean, reaching out to people that aren't, I don't know, that are renters. And I mean, I understand familiarizing yourself with the code, but it's just a different kind of person that you want to bring in. The people that are in their 30s. I mean, I'm in my 50s, but in their 30s, that's the future. We have to start thinking about that. And or else we're going to end up just living basically on a docked cruise ship.
Okay, thank you.
I think
Okay.
we should be looking at a focus group. I think it should probably be representative of a wide
Right, it needs to
variety
be
of the
diverse group,
population.
right.
Like our comprehensive plan says, that will provide housing for a wide variety of people. But I think we need to keep moving on this and be looking at all fronts. I think the RV park and Southwind are things we need to be talking about. I think, we've got the code audit and so incentivizing greater density with ADUs, duplexes, triplexes, changes in zoning, changes in building code, permit approval process. I do think we need to talk about short-term rentals, which we've already started talking about, and including the illegal ones if there's a lot of the under the radar illegal ones. So it feels to me like we just need to hit this on all fronts. And Marcy, I expect that you will come to us when we get to that stage in the code audit with some ideas and some recommendations on changes we can do.
Yes.
Particularly
Yeah, sure.
incentivizing.
I've been waiting for this moment.
Good. This moment or the moment that will.
Moment where you decide to hit this on all fronts.
Yep.
Okay.
Marcy, do any smaller towns do rent control? I mean, is that
Yes.
even a possibility? Like, in other words, because I've heard a lot of people tonight say how they've been forced out of where they were living because the rent was raised. Why can't there be a rent control in a town?
We
like
have
that?
we have a statewide rent control right now, Lisa. There is rent control in Oregon.
Yeah.
Well, that's a rent control, yeah, like the one in Portland, but it
No,
does.
statewide, Senate Bill
No, I know,
608.
I know that, but it does not keep you in your place because it doesn't, it still goes up too much for a lot of people to stay in their apartments or their rented houses. I know that for a fact. Because my daughter rents a place and has the statewide rent control and she was forced out because she couldn't make the amount of rent that the rent control allowed them to raise the rent. I mean, I'm just saying, it's not necessarily working, the state one.
Well, Marcy, so when does it look like?
Well, I would suggest that you do form a focus group with it and that we work this with as much dedication as people gave to the wetland focus.
Yeah.
And the trees. Tree group.
Yeah, I know that there's a tree group.
Yep.
I'm not as aware of what.
They've been working very hard too.
So we all want to make this happen and we all keep hoping that it's sooner rather than later. So what kind of time frame are we looking at now in our code audit process where we'll actually start to discuss some changes that will accomplish some of these things?
We will soon have, I think within 2 months, have the wetland overlay adopted and the organization adopted. And those things, with those things done, this is actually the main topic that I thought we would hit next. I think that it'd be great to have Alyssa continue to work with us if that is possible. And if there's a group that we can convene on a small group on a regular basis, there are a number of things that the code rewrite can address, but there's also a lot of things like the set of carrots and sticks are very broad and only some of them are zoning. And it would be good to look at those all together at the same time. and think about a plan that could roll out over the next, 2, 5, 7 years and beyond. And which things you can do first and which things you can do next. And you have an incredible resource with the county and the work that's going to be going on with the buildable lands inventory. I think this meeting and the amount of attention that you've received, the interest from renters and younger people, that we could build that into this, be incredibly productive.
This is not new to city council where the Clatsop Regional Housing Task Force meetings, Cannon Beach is very well represented. The last
All of
meeting.
us, all of us around.
All
I hear that there's a.
and the mayor,
Do almost.
2 staff members. So
And we're going to continue that.
we are,
Committed to that.
we're trying to learn as much as we can to.
Right.
So there's that too, that we're hearing what's going on. So
The very next step that I would like is for us to have a joint session with design review and planning and have Chet come and speak to us. And we would like you to also to be there. He has a vast amount of knowledge. We learned a lot just in a brief presentation he
Yeah.
made at our council retreat. And from that, and that will be a public meeting, so hopefully we get those young people back to listen also, and just to lay out some of our options. And then after that meeting, form a focus group.
Could we,
Would this,
the topic of the 29th of February, which is our next joint commission?
Oh, that would be,
would this also be the time that we might want to think about asking, taking applications for a focus group?
well, it has to be, we have to be careful about the formality.
Yeah.
They're informal focus groups, so it's
So
not.
we have to decide, we'll have to somehow figure out how to go about
Right.
organizing that.
Wait till Chet speaks and then.
Right,
see.
yeah.
Yeah.
But people should be thinking about
Right.
whether or not they'd like to be part of that.
yeah, the next meeting should definitely be about looking at what that looks like.
Yeah.
Alyssa, what would it look like to take advantage of the grant that's been offered to the cities within the county to do the buildable lands inventory?
Well, as you know, most of the process that is gonna happen is there's another consultant that is on board that the state is paying for, who's gonna do a lot of the analytical work around the land, the infrastructure, and working frankly closely with your staff on the data sources that are gonna come from the city so that you can get the right information back out. What I'm thinking actually, right, part of my job at the county is to help all of the cities figure out how to move housing forward and provide capacity. And so I might want to talk with Marcy about being able to find some other planning grant resources to help sort of, I'm hearing kind of multiple tracks here. One is what can we do with our code? What are the opportunities that we have here? Frankly, the carrot and stick track, sort of what are incentives or regulatory or taxation tools that might be considered. And then sort of the third track I see is kind of like a creative and innovation track. What might we do that's kind of interesting and different or specific to what this community wants, and being able to bring recommendations forward in each of those areas through the focus group perhaps, or through whichever approach makes sense for you, to really sort of tee up some recommendations and fund my time, fund Marcy's time through another planning grant that might complement that larger countywide work that could be a little bit more focused on sort of your scope of work.
Good.
That'd be great. The product might be a code rewrite actions that make the most sense immediately, as well as other actions having to do with use of the excise tax or applying the infrastructure grant from the state, or, it seems like it could be looking at not just the code rewrite, but accompanying, augmenting actions. And it would be actions, right? On the schedule, things that you plan to do at a certain time to begin to solve this problem.
Well, Well, to the point about the buildable lands inventory, you'd mentioned the timeline over the next year at the last countywide meeting. Are we still on track for that?
Yes, I think the order is gonna go buildable lands inventory, then capital improvements, infrastructure, and then the building supply work. So hopefully before a year, we'll start having some information about the land inventory side of it and sort of what's available for land. Marcy and I were whispering a little bit also about looking at specific parcels of property and doing what, might be called a development opportunity study and just looking at them and saying, what would it look like to put a duplex here? Or what would it look like to put housing above a commercial space? And just sort of run a design look, a permitting look, a financial pro forma, and just have some opportunities to look at development ideas that aren't specific projects or proposals that you have to vote on, to just sort of get a range of opportunities that might happen. And that could happen in a shorter timeline than the 1 year countywide approach.
Okay.
Thank you. Great. Other comments?
Well, I would just say that when all those approaches, and all those ideas and the code rewrite and everything, at least from the survey that was done by UrbWorks, the overarching feeling or the most important thing that people really appreciated about Cannon Beach is what it looks like. So idea of building 4-story or 5-story buildings downtown or doing all those things are not, even though they would increase density and they would provide more building space, are not things that I have seen from the town, from the survey that was done, that people are all interested in happening. So it has to happen and still maintain what is called the village character, however you do that. And I think it's possible. It's just, it calls for creativity.
Exactly.
Does everyone feel they've had a chance to speak? Some of us have been very quiet. Wheels are turning.
Well, I don't know if I ran across the Clatsop County dashboard for the housing task force from 2016. And had a lot of good information, I think they studied a lot of what is talked about, did surveys. I think 60% of the houses in Cannon Beach are empty, maybe the second homeowners, but something that I thought was the most informational for me was that single people are the ones that are looking for housing. So that's when the gentleman from Shorewood said that, his 1-bedroom apartments have hundreds of people on the wait list. So that's where the RV park, back in 2016 was looked at as I think a pilot program for putting little 400 square foot units. And I think it got stopped because people were like, well, there's only 10 units and who gets to decide?
It got
Who
stopped.
gets to live there?
It got stopped for other reasons.
It was stopped because building code changes.
Yeah,
Okay.
they changed the building code and they wouldn't let us.
Statewide building codes changed and we just couldn't do it.
Okay, but that's something that you're considering now again?
Not tiny homes.
Not tiny homes, okay.
But small. I mean,
Well, yeah, but that's where, it almost seems, you don't want to focus on your main group. I mean, because there's no way you're gonna satisfy the housing needs of everybody. And so look
At once. Right. It's a
Right,
staggered
or
approach.
ever. I mean,
Yeah.
you won't ever, I don't think any town can
I think
accommodate housing.
I think that's true here.
Completely, yeah. So that's where it seems logical to just really focus on the main group that you want to try to be able to find some housing for. So anyway, it was just a good report to read and see a lot of the work that went in to trying to fix housing back in 2016.
Yeah. Anyone else? Zoom, commissioners and
There's some audience members that have raised their hand.
Marco, did you want to speak? Is it Margot?
And two others up.
First one down when I called her name. Shy.
Up.
Margot, did you want to speak?
She muted. There she goes.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah, I've been having audio issues. I was trying to speak earlier and I switched from my iPad to my phone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah,
let-
Margot
let's
Lalich,
excuse you,
PO
'cause
Box. Yeah, Margot Lalich, PO Box 1282, Cannon Beach. These conversations are always interesting and I have a local perspective as well as a county perspective. And I think it's really important to sometimes add that historical kind of institutional perspective. And so I'm going to do that just briefly with my story because I own a home in Cannon Beach. And sometimes it's homeowners are portrayed as if they are evil or bad because perhaps they have money or they've been able to buy a home or they're more affluent for some reason or they're entitled. And that isn't the story for everyone. And I'm sure for many of us in Cannon Beach, I was one of the first tenants in Elk Creek Terrace. And before Elk Creek Terrace was built, I lived north of Gearhart. So this is like the late 1980s, early 90s. And we had a wonderful children's center here at the time. And I used to drive from Gearhart, north of Gearhart, I was a single mom, all the way to Cannon Beach for my kids to go in the children's center, to drive all the way up to Astoria, where I worked, to all the way to Cannon Beach at the end of the day, and then back to where I was living. And when I was finally able to move to Cannon Beach, because my domestic situation had changed, I was able to move into Elk Creek Terrace, and it was wonderful. And I was there with my children. And after a year, I got evicted because they didn't calculate my income correctly. And they would not allow you to deduct your childcare expenses. So when we get upset about things, we have to have historical context for them. So because they misvalued me or didn't calculate correctly, they had to help me move out. So then I bounced from year to year for 3 years with my 2 children. I lived in one place on Harrison Street where I literally slept in my living room for a year so my kids could each have a bedroom. And then a homeowner who was raising their children, we were all raising our kids together, said, somebody has a rental in Cannon Beach, but they don't live here anymore. They live in Gearhart. They might be interested in selling their home. You should talk to them. And I was like, I could never afford a home. I'm a single mom. I was in my 30s. I was on a professional track, but I was working very hard at that. I had no family here at all. And so I approached this homeowner and said, would you be interested in selling your home? I knew nothing about buying a home. And she said, actually, I would. And so prices of homes are always relative, right? And so this home had been a rental. It was a rat-infested dump. I was actually able to buy it. I cashed in savings bonds, every penny I had to provide a home for my children. And that was almost 30 years ago. And every year I did another project on it. I bartered, I rented. As Jen said, I rented to her because I do have an accessory dwelling and it's grandfathered in. And it's been with this house since the 70s because June Croft, if many of you remember her, owned this home. She and her husband built it back in the 70s. And so what I've done since I've lived in this home as a homeowner, never working in this community, but working for the county and other places, is that I've provided affordable housing. I've also given to this community many, many dollars to many nonprofits because I want to give back to the community. And little by little, I improved my home. I became a good neighbor. We have a wonderful neighborhood and I continue to give back. And one of the reasons, and I've worked away from this community because my work has taken me away and I have rented my home, but we have to also remember that it's not just about tenants, it's about landlords. And sometimes we do want to share our home, but when our homes are not taken care of or taken advantage of, it's deeply, deeply hurtful and offensive because working people like myself, what we put into our home, and I was able to raise my children here. I did it on my own. I did it by incredibly hard work. And I have done everything I can to reciprocate that back to the community. And I think Elk Creek Terrace is wonderful. Shorewood Terrace is wonderful, and we do need more housing like that. But I think we also need to look at what is the composition of our community and why is it that we continue to invest in these low income positions or lower income positions, right? When maybe we can be a little bit more innovative and think about how to bring more higher paying jobs into the community as well. And so I think it's not either or, it's and both, and that not all homeowners are bad people, and that we want to be able to support everyone living and working in this community. It has been part of my life work and my commitment to community, but also knowing my own story. And again, I was one of the first tenants at Elk Creek Terrace, and little by little by little by little, I was able to make my way into having a home with my children. And I think that's a very important story. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not gonna try to pronounce the name of the next person.
So we're gonna unmute.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Name is Bar, last name is
I recognize the voice.
PO Box 1012 in Cannon Beach. Yeah, I would just want to share something, and then I think Margot said it best. About 6 months ago, there were a family that were about to be evicted because they were just renting that place and didn't know or had any resources and couldn't think that they could own a home, and because just income wise. So I wanted to tell the community that there are some resources available, and we put them through the USDA program, and they were able to own a home, like buy a home and provide for their family. And for a lot of people that think they cannot afford to buy a home in Cannon Beach or nearby, I think it's just a lack of resources. And I think that's where coming together and kind of approaching, banks and learning all about the resources that are available is one thing that we can do for immediate needs. The question I have for, I think is Lisa, is in her, role, she's been working this for decades. Historically, have you seen any of the timber company that owns land either donate or agree to sell some part of the land? Because I know, either north, east, or south of Cannon Beach, there are land owned by timber companies. Could we approach them to either, have them donate some or buy? And maybe that could be also a part of the solution. And I also would like Aaron to kind of share, the project that he had for the working affordable housing for Archcape that didn't go through. So kind of, those are the things that I wanted to add. And the focus group will be good, but I think in that focus group, it'll be important to bring people that are, lenders, people that work in mortgage, and kind of educate part of us to how to, proceed to buy a home. Also, the people that are already in those low housing income, kind of help them get out of there, to own a home, and allow people that are seeking, for home, and then kind of start that process. And maybe, that would in the 5 to 10 years allow a lot of them to those family to own a home, and be hopefully that could be a 20% chance to solve that problem, the housing problem in Cannon Beach. That's what I wanted to share.
Thank you.
Hey, Bar, it's good to hear your voice. And just real quick, the Archcape project is not dead forever. It's in purgatory at the moment, and we hope to move forward with it again. Just like everything. I mean, I heard 2016 we there was some type of push for housing, and here we are 8 years later with little that's happened since then. With that Arch Cape project, we had steam, we had momentum, we were moving forward, and then a couple citizens got involved and put the delay tactics into the process, and here we are with a 6-month delay that's coming up, and hopefully that project will regain steam. But with anything, part of the nonprofit, Lisa mentioned, Barb mentioned, having Chet come talk to the group again. Chet is the executive director of a nonprofit that we formed called North Coast Housing Solutions that's spearheading that project in Arch Cape. And we've looked at several other, county surplus lands. Alyssa talked about earlier, the county having surplus lands. We've looked at those. We've looked at the RV park. We've looked at Southwind, and basically nothing happens from a nonprofit's perspective without that land being, in a very loose term, given to the nonprofit for us to be able to put together some affordable or workforce housing project. So, I mean, we talked about the village of village character of Cannon Beach and keeping it downtown. I think that's great. But, again, I bring up Southwind. Why not give, again, that's a loose term, give that property to someone like North Coast Housing Solutions that has, all board members here local to the North Coast, that you could trust all of us. Give us that property and let us build a 4-story or 6-story, 200-unit affordable housing complex on it. I think that puts a huge, and I'm dreaming here, but that's the only way that something happens. If we relax the rules and we put all of our energy into it. Otherwise, we're going to be here 8 years later with nothing having happened. We're going to be talking about it again, and all those 30-year-olds still won't be here. So that project's not dead, Bara, but yeah, thanks for bringing that one up. And I have all sorts of more things to say, but in the interest of time, I'm going to shut up and mute myself for the evening.
Thank you, Aaron. I'm not just for muting, but thanks for your comments. So Amber?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone, because I know this meeting's been a long one, and I appreciate the city and the council letting everybody speak and making that available, because I think this is so important. And there is one thing that I want to just clarify that I don't think anybody's talked about tonight, which is the fact that everybody that bought their houses 40 years ago, the appreciation rate of everybody's houses has skyrocketed, like, yeah, as everybody knows, but yet labor wages have stayed suppressed. So the idea of somebody in their 30s buying a house in 1980 is a very different equation than someone in their 30s now buying a house here. And so I just feel like that's something to keep in mind, because there's a lot of historical reference, which I think stories are important. And I think understanding and sharing stories in a community is essential and really important. But I think comparing, it's not apples to apples anymore, especially since 2019. So I just wanted to say that and then shut up and let you guys go and have your evening. And thank you again for everything.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else?
And then final one.
Who is it?
Pat again.
Oh, Pat, you want to speak
Yeah.
again?
Yes, Pat again. So can I ask Bara a question?
Sure.
Okay, so Bara, you mentioned USDA, that you are involved with USDA. Is that through US Bank? Are you doing something else to, and it sounds like maybe you have a lot of information about other ways for people to do loans. So important, so important. I know Community Action Team used to offer classes on how to purchase homes, first time home buying. And just, that's my question. If I think there's one in there somewhere.
Hey, Pat. Yeah, USDA is federal. It's not just a lot of bank offers it, and also a lot of private lenders offer it. And there is also I'm blanking on there's two programs, and there's more. Little to no down payment, basically, to help people, based on their income, and I think, over the years I worked at US Bank, we've helped a number of people that didn't know that exists. And those classes, we can, help and arrange that. If somebody wants to get involved, I can bring on the people that will teach us the classes, and they will be happy to do that. They're doing it all over, especially Washington County. But we can bring them on. They will be more than happy to help and get people into homes.
Thank you. Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, Bara.
Okay.
You're welcome. Can I just wanted, maybe the question wasn't clear, but I was just wanted to ask Lisa if, in her role, if she had seen any of their timber company, I know they sell it to nonprofit, but kind of donate or even sell it to the city, because we know that we are surrounded by a lot of them. And I was just wondering if she's seen that happen in the past.
I have not ever seen a timber company give land to a local government.
It did to us.
Just pretty.
Very steep discount.
Yeah, often those properties need infrastructure to make them suitable for housing. They're not always well located in terms of jobs or transportation. But I have seen timber companies donate materials or participate in home building and be community partners in that way, where they offer their skills and capacity to help build a home. There's a developer in Bend who's come out here and is looking for opportunities to build, who's been working with Clatsop Community Action to help them build their tiny home village in Seaside. And so I do think that the idea of partnering with companies that have land, timber, wood, right? We've all talked about mass timber. There is opportunities for business partnership.
Good.
Yeah, and they were involved in whether it was Lewis and Clark. I'm not sure which iteration of the timber company was involved in the Rainforest Reserve. I believe they sold a portion of it at a substantial, discount, and maybe gave some. But yeah, I've never seen that either. In the housing context, it'd be nice.
Yeah, they sold it to one of the local nonprofit, the Onion Peak, if that's the one you're referring to, Aaron.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's the one. They sold it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. One more time. Anybody? Well, I would like to thank our guest speaker tonight. I'm sure you think it was going to last this long, but
I've been to a few meetings.
okay. And thank you, Marcy. Thanks to all of our audience members, both Zoom and in person, and design review and planning. Thank you for coming. Well, we will meet again. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
You're welcome.